Don't fall, don't drop anything. Okay. Hi, welcome back to my channel. My name is Bronwyn if you're new here, and today we're going to be doing my 2022 reading wrap-up. So I read 54 books this year. My goal was 55, so I almost made it. But anyway, today is New Year's Day. I'll be picking up bottles with you on New Year's Day. So here's everything I read. Oh, I should probably go over how I rate my books. So this is my reading journal, and in it I almost dropped this off my bed. And in it I have how I rate my books. If you want me to show you my reading journal, I can do that in a different video. 1 star is this is the worst book I've ever read. 2 stars is it wasn't good, I wouldn't recommend it. 3 is I'm pretty indifferent. It was like it was impressionless, it's forgettable. 4, it was a really good book, there was very little wrong with it. I will rave about it and tell you to read it. And then 5 is this is my new favorite. I loved it so much, I will rave about it. I'm part of this fandom now. I love it. That is how I will be judging books this new year. Not how I did it last year, but that's kind of what you can expect this on. Starting the year in January, where everyone starts the year. You Should See Me in a Crown by Leah Johnson. I'm not quite sure. This book I gave 5 stars. Looking back, it would probably be 3.5 to 4. This is about a black queer girl who is trying to win prom because prom is a big deal in her town, and whoever wins prom gets like a college scholarship. You'll slowly see my bookshelf start to refill. Then I read The Secret Garden by Frances Hodgson Burnett. Frances Hodgson Burnett also wrote A Little Princess, which I loved growing up, so I had high hopes for this one, and it did not disappoint. At the time I gave it 5 stars, and I think that was more of a 4.5, but Goodreads doesn't let you do 0.5s. Then I read Book Talk's favorite book, It Ends With Us by Colleen Hoover. I gave this one 4 stars. I have a whole reading vlog on it, it's my most watched video, so I will link that in the card and down below. I enjoyed it. Ryle was so annoying, he pissed me off, and I felt like her and Atlas didn't have enough time together in this one. I have read It Starts With Us, I'll talk about that later, but it was a good story and it dealt with some heavy issues. Colleen Hoover's writing bothered me a little bit in this one, and that's why I got 4 stars. Then the last book I read in January, I only read 4 books this month, The Sun Is Also a Star by Nicola Yoon. At the time I gave this one 5 stars. Looking back, again, this one was probably a 3. This one was good. It was so quick. I did think that even though they only spent 24 hours together, it was a well fleshed out relationship. Maybe a little unbelievable. Well, definitely unbelievable, but like a little pushing it. But overall, I think it was pretty well written. Then, moving on to February, I read The Wrath and the Dawn by Renee Ahdieh. I also have a reading thing about this one, so I will link that in the card. This one I gave 5 stars, and I stand by that. I really liked this one. This one's like a cross between Arabian Nights and The Selection. If you like the love triangle and the love story of The Selection, I would highly recommend this one. It's basically that, but with magic. Then I read What If It's Us by... what are their names? Adam Silvera and something that starts with a B. But I gave this one 2 stars. I did not enjoy it. The story was really repetitive, and also they were like, the stakes are so high for their relationship. I'm like, no, they're not. And I was really looking forward to this one because it's like Broadway and the lines from Hamilton and whatever, and it was not good. Then I read The Boy, the Mole, the Fox, and the Horse. Don't know who this one is by either. I don't have the book in front of me. This one I gave 5 stars. It's a really quick read. I think they came out with a longer version this year, which I want to read, and I think it was really sweet and cute, and the drawings were really simplistic and pretty. Then the last book I read in February was actually for school. The Glass Castle by Jeanette Ward, or that's not French. Jeanette Wells, I think. I gave this one 4 stars. It was really enjoyable. It was a memoir, so that was interesting because I don't really read many of those. But there was that added, I'm reading this for school, which kind of took me out of it. But I did really enjoy the book and I thought it was good. Then moving on to March, I read 3 books. The first of which was Peter Pan by J.M. Barrie. I wanted to read the classic story, and the only problem with this one was I think that Peter's supposed to be leading kids to heaven, and like Neverland is heaven, and I think the book said that, but I wasn't quite clear on it, and there was just a few things like that where I was like, the only reason I know what's going on is because I've watched the Disney film. So I gave that one 4 stars because it was still really enjoyable and it's a great story, but I was a little confused sometimes. Then I read If I Stay. Don't know who the author of this one is. I'll just put all the authors at the bottom. Sorry, editing me. I gave this one 3 stars. It was quite forgettable. She dies, but she's kind of in limbo, and she's trying to decide if she wants to stay or die and go on. But the whole time, kind of spoiler alert, you're being led to believe that she's gonna go with one choice, and then on the last page she decides to go with the other choice. But I'm like, the whole book you spent justifying this other choice, and now you went with this one. Like, what? Then last book I read in March was People We Meet on Vacation by Emily Henry. I really want to own this book. I read it from the library. Did I say library? I gave it 4 stars, or 5 stars. 4 stars, but I want to read it again because I think I would give it 5 stars. But it was a really cute second chance romance, friends to lovers. It was all over book talk. I can't speak. And I loved it. Moving on to April, I read 5 books. The first of which was Serafina. Don't know who the author is. I read this one for school and I enjoyed it. It did have that slight drawback of being for school. Ending was a little odd, and I think some of like the battles, I was like, you're not writing this well. So I gave it 4 stars. Then I read One of Us Is Next by Karen M. McManus, the sequel to One of Us Is Lying. I gave this one 4 stars. Looking back, I think I would give it 3.5. One of Us Is Lying is definitely better, and I didn't like who the like villain was. I don't know how to explain it without spoiling it. Then I read the sequel to If I Stay, which is Where She Went. I just needed another quick, forgettable book. That was this. I gave it 2 stars. It was not good. I felt like there was no plot whatsoever, and the whole time you knew how it was gonna end, and it was really annoying. Then I read Ugly Love by Colleen Hoover. I heard people raving about this, saying it was amazing, and I was like, okay, I want to read it. Right before I bought it, I heard a bunch of people saying, like, I didn't like the step-sibling romance, and I was like, what are you talking about? Step-sibling romance? And people saying it was bad, it was not good, and I was like, I'm getting so many controversial opinions, I need to read it. I read it, and then me and my friends were talking about weird books at lunch one day, and I brought this up and started telling them about the plot, and they all got so confused and just like appalled. I brought it, my friend read the back, and she's like, just by reading the back, you would not know what goes on in this book. Kate and Miles in the present are having a friends with benefits relationship. Miles in the past is dating Rachel, who is his stepsister. So that kind of tells you the book. The way that this author's mind works. Oh, did I say what I gave Ugly Love? I gave it 2 stars. Then I read The Seven Husbands of Evelyn Hugo by Taylor Jenkins Reid. I gave this one 4.5 stars. It was so good. I have a reading vlog on this one too. Click the card. It was amazing. The only reason it doesn't have 5 stars is because when I made the rating, I was stupid. I want to give it 5 stars now. And I can change it. It's 5 stars. Was all over book talk. Taylor Jenkins Reid is a really good author. I highly recommend. But this follows Evelyn Hugo, who was a movie star from the 50s to the 80s. She's telling this reporter everything, all the behind the scenes, what it's like to be an actress, her infamous 7 husbands, and it's so good. Definitely worth the read, and Taylor Jenkins Reid is definitely an author that you should look into. Moving on to May, I started with One Last Stop by Casey McQuiston. This is my 2nd book by them. I also read Red, White, and Royal Blue last year. And the thing I find with Casey McQuiston's books, there's always kind of a chunk in the middle where I feel like it could be taken out. Like, they're quite long, and I'm like, it's a good story. It's an amazing premise. Your writing is really good. There's just usually a chunk in the middle that I'm like, this is getting repetitive. Take out these chapters, you're making me want to stop reading. Then I read another book talk book, A Good Girl's Guide to Murder by Holly Jackson. I gave this one 5 stars. It was a really good mystery. I'm not a huge mystery reader. Was a really good mystery. So this is following Pip, who is reopening a cold case, or a closed case, from 5 years ago about a dual murder and suicide in her town. This one you definitely have to look up the trigger warnings because there are quite a few. Do that for any book you read, but this one is so worth the hype, and I read the entire trilogy, and this one is the best of the trilogy. Then I read My Sister's Keeper by Jodi Picoult. This one was interesting. It's not like most of what I read. It did make me cry, so it gets points for that. It's about a girl who was basically born to keep her sister alive. Her sister has a very specific type of cancer, and they needed a bone marrow donor, but no one matched it. So then they had her basically just to help Kate, her older sister, medically. And there's a plot twist at the ending. It's a good book, I guess. I gave it 4 stars. Then I read The Little Prince. I gave this one 4 stars. It's a really quick, like 200-page book. I read it in an afternoon, and it's just a really sweet book about like enjoying life. Kind of like The Boy, the Mole, the Fox, and the Horse. Then moving on to June, I started with a very summary book, Malibu Rising by Taylor Jenkins Reid. This one, you are following the Riva siblings, and they are throwing a party, and you're just following them throughout the 24 hours of this day. Sometimes it cuts back to their parents, Mick and... do we get her mom's name? I don't see it. I forget her name. So they are children of a famous movie star. Basically, the oldest had to raise her siblings, and it's showing the repercussions of all of them growing up in the situation and how they've all dealt with it differently. But then we also cut back to their parents' romance and kind of see why they ended up the way they did. At the time, I was kind of like, what was the plot of this book? Looking back, I'm like, oh, there was a plot. Harry Potter and the Philosopher's Stone by J.K. Rowling, a classic. If you don't know the plot or story or premise of Harry Potter, then you have been living under a rock since the 90s. So I'm not going to explain that, but I gave it 5 stars because I love Harry Potter. Then I read Harry Potter and the Chamber of Secrets, also by J.K. Rowling, also 5 stars. And then I read Harry Potter and the Prisoner of Azkaban by J.K. Rowling, also 5 stars. I read the sequel to A Good Girl's Guide to Murder, Good Girl, Bad Blood by Holly Jackson. This one was kind of like One of Us Is Next, where at the end I was kind of like, okay, so they did it. Like, it wasn't someone central to the plot, but I did give it 4 stars. Then July, I think this was my best reading month of the year, because if you don't know, I went on vacation for all of July. I made a vlog of the entire trip. There's 4 of them. I can read in the car, so I got a lot of reading done. And the first one I read was Heartstopper by Alice Oseman. This one I gave 5 stars. It's a really cute romance graphic novel that I read super quickly. If you haven't read these or watched the Netflix adaptation, which is actually a really good adaptation, ow, that hurt, I definitely recommend. Then I read You Have a Match by Emma Lord. This one I gave 4 stars. It's about a girl who goes to summer camp to be with her friend, but also takes a DNA test and finds out she has a long lost sister who also goes to this camp. So she's dealing with her crush on her best friend and finding out that she has a sister. Then I read one of the biggest hyped series of the year, The Summer I Turned Pretty by Jenny Han. This one, I gave the first one 4 stars. The problem is there's a lot of time jumping, so I can't really tell you what happened in each individual book, but a girl who feels prettier this summer than other summers and is finally ready to go after her lifelong childhood crush on the guy that she spends every summer with. Brother comes into play, and this other guy, and he doesn't actually like her, and does she actually like him, and oh no, the drama. It's Not Summer Without You by Jenny Han. I gave this one 3 stars. It was not as good as the first one, and I couldn't tell you what happened in this book versus the first book because I couldn't tell what the plot was because so much time jumping. And then finally, We'll Always Have Summer by Jenny Han. I gave this one 2 stars. It read like a Wattpad story written by a 12-year-old about her favorite on-screen couple, and I did not like that. It did not feel like an actual book. I've read fanfiction better than this. We'll talk about that later. That being said, it was not good. Then I finished all the books I brought with me on vacation, so I bought this one in New Mexico. That's Daisy Jones and the Six by Taylor Jenkins Reid, the 3rd Taylor Jenkins Reid book of the year. This one, I was not in a good headspace when I read it. I was very sick and we were driving through a really hot climate. So I'd love to read it again because it's a really good story and a really good book. Definitely worth any and all hype it's getting. Highly recommend it. It's about a band in the 70s and all that goes along with that. Oh, I gave Daisy Jones and the Six 4 stars because I was sick, but I think if I was in a better headspace when I read it, I would give it 5. Beach Read by Emily Henry. This one's a really cute second chance romance, academic rivals to lovers, which is why I like it. I don't like enemies to lovers. I do really like academic rivals to lovers. This is really good. I really do enjoy Emily Henry's writing. She writes really cute romances. This one's about a girl named January who has just moved in next to her college rival Augustus Everett. They are both writers, so they decided they're going to swap genres and see who can write the best book. So she is going to write the next great American novel, and he is going to try contemporary romance. And then the last book that I read on my trip, this one was also bought in New Mexico, Book Lovers by Emily Henry. This one came out this past year, and it is about Nora, who is a big time publishing manager. I don't really know what her job is. What's the boy's name? Charlie, who is like her rival in the industry. And then she is in this small town where he happens to live, and they're kind of the only ones each other knows. So they end up spending a lot of time with each other, and it is interesting. Oh, I gave Book Lovers 4 stars. I don't know if I said that. Then, moving on to August, I read Normal People, which I actually read mostly throughout July. This book I heard really good things about. I gave it 2 stars. It was so repetitive. They did not fit together well, and I was confused by the plot and what was going on. Yeah, did not enjoy this one. Then I read Heartstopper number 2 by Alice Oseman. This is basically like a part 2 to the first book because it picks up seconds after the first book ends, and the TV show also is based on this one. Then I read Heartstopper 3, which also by Alice Oseman, also 5 stars. All of the Heartstoppers got 5 stars. This one, they're in Paris, and I really like this one because not only is it a really cute romance, but they're also bringing in other things like mental health and eating disorders and coming out and just stuff like that. Like, this one's much more multifaceted than the first 2 where they're just falling in love, but it's really adorable. I love them. And the final Heartstopper book, volume 4. This one, also 5 stars, also amazing, also dealing with so much stuff search up the trigger warnings for Heartstopper. This one is so cute because they're adorable, but then also dealing with mental health, eating disorders, anxiety, depression, all of that in a beautiful romantic package. September, my worst reading month of the year, and Anne of Green Gables by L.M. Montgomery, one of my favorite books ever, 5 stars. I annotated this book. If you don't know the plot or any premise of Anne of Green Gables, you've been living under a rock. But basically it's about a red-headed orphan that goes to live with an old brother and sister, and she's got a wild imagination, and she's awesome and goes on all types of adventures, and I love her. Also, watch the TV show, Anne with an E, my favorite show ever. Also in September, I read Anne of Avonlea, the sequel. I gave this one 5 stars as well, and it's really good, and it just kind of picks up right after Anne of Green Gables. October, starting with another Colleen Hoover one, November 9. This one I gave 3 stars. It was not the greatest. I had really high hopes for this one. I had heard really good things, and I was kind of disappointed. It's about these 2 people that meet on November 9th and decide that they will only ever again meet on November 9th. Anyway, November 9th. I don't really know what to say about it. Then I read How to Train Your Dragon by Cressida Cowell. I love the soundtrack, love the movies. That was a huge session of the year, and so I read the book. I literally read it in a day when I was sick. Nothing like the movie, but it is a really good story, and she's good at world building for 200 pages. I gave How to Train Your Dragon 4 stars. The Rose and the Dagger, the sequel to The Wrath of the Dawn by Renee Ahdieh. I gave this one 4 stars. Not as good as the first one, but still really good. Then I read the last book in the Inheritance Games trilogy by Jennifer Lynn Barnes, The Final Gambit, and I gave this one 4 stars. It had been a while since I had read the other 2 books, so I want to reread the series, I think, this year. Then I read a book called Fangirl by, I think it's Rainbow Rowell. How many stars did I give it? I gave it 3 stars. I was pretty indifferent. It wasn't what I expected. I thought it was going to be a romance, and then it was contemporary, and then a romance. It was like a coming of age. But it's about a girl who's going off to college, and she's a twin, and she's kind of drifting away from her twin, and she's a fanfic writer. It was kind of interesting because you're reading like 2 books. You're reading her fanfiction and the actual story. But it was a good book, and I did enjoy it all the same. It Starts With Us by Colleen Hoover. The sequel to It Ends With Us. This one's following Atlas and Lily. I gave it 4 stars. I like a second chance romance friends to lovers. That's my favorite trope. I also have a reading blog on this one. After that, I read Twisted Games by, I think it's like Anna Huang. This is the second in the Twisted series. I did not read the first one because these ones you can read out of order. They're all standalones that just follow a friend group. I gave this one 2 stars. I did not like it at all. It was Princess Bodyguard Romance. For the first like 150 pages, there was no chemistry. She tried to make cute banter, and I was like, this is not cute banter, this is arguing. If you want to avoid the smut, you have to avoid chapter 17, 23, 24, 26, 27, 28, 29, 30, 32, 33, 37, 38, and 42. So if that gives you some context to what this book is, there was no chemistry, it was not good. Then I read Instructions for Dancing by Nicola Yoon. I gave this one 3 stars. It was kind of boring. It was all very one note. When she sees people who are in love kiss, she sees how their relationship's going to end. Very one note and not very exciting. Sorry, we're in November now. I read Stellarlune by Shannon Messenger. I give this one 4.5 stars. I have a reading vlog for this one. It is coming out soon, so watch out for that. I love Keeper of the Lost Cities so much. One of my comfort series, but the books need to end. It has been too long. It is being dragged out. But basically the first 500 pages of this book, nothing happened. It was basically just alternating between we don't have anything to do chapters and oh no, I'm stuck in a romance chapters. Plot finally picked up on around page 500, but I was like, nothing is happening. I was bored. But I love Keeper all the same, and it did square out in the end. Looking back, it wasn't as boring as I thought it was. Then I read The Siren by Kiera Cass. This one was a reread. It's really quick, nice romance, cute. The second time reading it, I was like, this romance is a little less believable than I thought, but I gave it 4 stars all the same. It's about a siren who falls in love. I did like the lore of the sirens in this one. Go into December, I read As Good as Dead by Holly Jackson, the 3rd in the Good Girls Guide to Murder trilogy. This one I gave 4 stars. I've heard that this one wasn't as good, and I kind of agree with that. I still think that the second one was worse. I read All the Young Dudes, years 1 to 4. This is a fanfic. It's basically canon. And if you want to read about the Marauders, there is no better place to start than with All the Young Dudes by Miss King Bean 89. I think that's the name. I gave this one 5 stars. It was really good. I did like the perspective of Mooney. Then All the Young Dudes 5 to 7. I gave 4.5 stars because this one just as good as the first, but I do not like Friends with Benefits, as I already mentioned. And then the last one, All the Young Dudes Till the End. This one tore out my heart, stomped on it, put it back on my chest, and then decided it wanted to tear it out and do it again. But it got 4.5 stars. I bawled my eyes out. but after a certain point, or I can spoil it, everyone knows the plot of Harry Potter. After Lily and James died, it's supposed to be 12 years until the ending of the book, and it just felt like a week. That's why it lost that half a star. And then lastly, I got a Kobo for Christmas, and I read The Cheat Sheet by Sarah Adams. Gave it 4 stars. It was cute. It was a really nice friends to lovers, but the ending was a little rushed. So thank you so much for watching. Please be sure to like this video if you enjoyed it. Subscribe to see more content from me. Follow my other socials, always linked down below. And yeah, so bye. Oh, and have a really good 2023. Start of the year. I should say that.